Hi all, my name is Meg. I'm a neuroscientist by training and have always been in the behavioral health research space. Now, driven by personal stories, I grew desperate to find ways where we can understand our mind and lifestyle health in real-world, everyday environments. So these are in our places where we live, work, and play, like our homes, schools, workplaces, because this environment is where health and wellness is actually happening. This led me to exploring data from our connected devices, like our smartphones and wearables that prefer real-time and real-world data, and from that, designing interventions that are truly meaningful and precise for end users. Now, fast forward, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Neurum Health, and what we do best is personalizing behavioral support at scale. Now, the impact we have is to ensure that our wellness journeys are less one-size-fits-all and more one-size-fits-one for everyone. Now, you're going to hear the term behavioral health quite a bit, and what that really just means is just your mind or mental health plus everyday lifestyle behaviors, such as your level of movement, like your steps, for example, sleep, etc. Now, this talk highlights the importance of meeting end users where they are and the power of personalization and relevance to them, and sharing some of the things that we've been up to at Neurum Health in driving behavioral health and wellness journeys that truly resonate with people. Now, a quick outline. First, I'm going to start with a real user journey or user story, and through that highlight some key issues. Typically, it comes as a two-part problem, and how we at Neurum have been tackling these, and then end with a brief what's next. So here I really want to highlight that real world example, which happens a lot more often than you think behind closed doors. And we're just going to take the workplace as a key example here. Now, imagine there's this guy, Caleb. He's a typical employee, and who, like the 1 in 3 employees in APAC, will experience behavioral ill health at work. Now, his employer hired him because he gets along great with his team. He's fantastic. It's not that he doesn't love his job or the people around him. But like the rest of us, there are a mix of factors that can come into play that is going to affect his behavioral health and wellness. Now, like 80% of the workforce, Caleb is going to come back into work even if he's experiencing a poor level of well-being at that point in time. And what that could look like on a day-to-day basis is that he could go through the motions of the day, making critical errors at work or sitting at his desk, feeling quite checked out, unfocused, unproductive, kind of feeling like he's on autopilot mode, and his performance starts to droop a bit. Now, Caleb starts taking sick days off as things progress, and his ill health progresses as well. But that he doesn't mention anything about that, that it has anything to do with his behavioral wellness levels, because he might not necessarily be aware. That's one. He maybe might note some physiological changes, for example, his level of appetite, or maybe his sleep patterns have changed, or sleep quality has gotten a bit worse. But he goes back to work, and this cycle kind of continues. Now, Caleb may or may not want to mention this if he grows that level of consciousness to his workplace, but he feels that it could potentially hurt his career progression. He's also unsure whether his workplace offers behavioral health and wellness resources and support, and it's quite difficult to find. Now, time goes on, and say things up the ante, and they get worse, and it gets overwhelming for Caleb, and the help seeking process is also very frustrating. Not knowing his level of wellness, his risk levels, how well is he, and like many employees experiencing this level, which enters more of a crisis mode as well, for Caleb, is 2x more likely to leave their job. Now, the guy in the story is actually my co-founder, and this is his story, which he's given me permission to share. But what this is also trying to highlight is that it doesn't have to get to a clinical grade of illness for people to leave your organization, or for the negative effects to be felt. So we often hear this statistic of 1 in 4, so 1 in 4 at any given point in time experience mental illness. And that's one we're used to hearing, but we're also talking about the risk of the 3 in 4 as well. And so it really brings up the question of how can we get more proactive, more preventative, and precise. So wherever someone is on their journey, wherever it was at the beginning, middle, or towards the end in that crisis mode, we can meet them where they are in supporting them. Now, if we look at that story, there were actually several problems at play here, but it really boiled down to 2 parts. The first was the lack of awareness, and the second part was in terms of maintenance, or what to do about it. Now, our health and wellness are very pervasive. When I sort of lay it out in a story in that way, it seems pretty obvious, but these fluctuations and these day-to-day behaviors could be quite difficult to catch. So this leads me to the next bit in delving a bit deeper in terms of the problems. Now, I say it's a 2-part problem, however, oftentimes they're tackled in silo. And the 2 parts of that issue regards awareness/measurement and maintenance, and these 2 really have to go hand in hand. And I'll share more about this in detail. Now, imagine that Caleb's story is kind of like an invisible fire, and it's smoking up in your organization or home or school. And what we're defaulting to currently are fire extinguishers, if you will, but it's possible to get smoke detectors and sprinklers nowadays. Currently, there is a plethora of ways to get a great level of measurement while we're just going about our day-to-day. For example, a more accessible version of this would be consumer-grade sensor-based data from our phones and wearables that allow for things like our Apple Health Kit or Fitbit if we wear one. So we understand things like our level of movement, our heart rate, and sleep patterns, etc. But only tracking really gives you the smoke detector bit. It answers, where am I now? Maybe flag risk when it pops up, but not what can I do about it or that next step. So half the feedback loop is missing. On the other hand, we can also have great interventions in behavioral health. When we look at mental health, for example, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's acceptance and commitment therapy, and dialectical behavioral therapy, etc., which we've over time also have learned to design these and to deliver these in a digital first experience. So really tweaking it so we can deliver it online through a web page format even, or through our smartphone through an app version, for example. So these ones are quite common. However, just providing these and focusing on one framework, for example, just focusing on CBT, only really gives you the sprinklers, and it makes the assumption that people are aware of what to be using, that's right for them, to be proactive. And it usually means tapping into a smaller, more committed demographic already, so a more conscious demographic, if you will, to be incentivized to use these solutions. Now, contrasting to the previous scenario, the measurement scenario, in this case, we know what to do about it, but not the where am I now, when to use it, or where am I going. Now, this actually coincides with the number one reason or number one feedback that we get often as to why people don't see support or use resources made readily available for them, even if they knew they were available. And this is because oftentimes it only tackles one half of that equation and doesn't close the entire loop. So people wouldn't really know where to find the right resources, didn't know how it's relevant for them, didn't even know when was bad enough or what the threshold for risk was, and where on the spectrum they are in terms of their behavioral health and wellness metrics. So in order for us to understand a fuller, more dynamic story of your behavioral health and wellness, it's important to take these two parts and form them into a seamless process. And the way we do this is, first we understand where you are on the behavioral health spectrum, typically through data, to then from that data profile deliver the relevant information with a delightful digital first experience, and then making sure that we don't start from square one, so we are learning over time, so that each interaction is not only meaningful, but we're not flying in the dark and starting from scratch each and every single time. So we have to put the measurement and management hand in hand for a comprehensive journey. Now, before diving into Neurum's headwind in this arena, I'd like to just set the scene out a little bit and have just distilled a few trends or points that really set the scene here. And the first one is the evolution from pathogenesis to salutogenesis. And to explain this a little bit more, traditionally healthcare models are designed for disease. And the way in which many of us are familiar or interact with this healthcare system centers more around Western medicine and its philosophies as the building blocks. And this is called the pathogenic approach. So this means a lot of the journey in care is centered around the disease or factors that cause the illness itself. Then in the late 70s, a medical sociologist called Anton Antonovsky actually came along and proposed the Salutogenic Model. And this means the genesis and assets of health and well-being, if you will. And it really shone more of a spotlight on things like stress, coping, health on our day-to-day. So it's not about the absence of illness or shining a harsh spotlight on illness itself anymore, but rather how do we promote things that better our quality of life, things that make our day-to-day lives better from a wellness front, just in our daily lives. Now, if we dig a little deeper, the salutogenic model also has a lot of roots in Ibn Sina, who's a 14th century Central Asian polymath's work as well. And he notes a lot about environmental factors, like our air, the land that people live on. If we translate that now to contemporary data types, that could be things like looking at air pollution, air quality, and urban density and how that interacts with your health and wellness. But what was fantastic was that he was one of the first physicians to take note of your mind health as well, your mental health. So he created a philosophy and system of understanding what we know as holistic health today, which includes things like our everyday habits and behaviors, from diet, sleep, movement, and of course, psychological factors. And the interesting thing is that what was maybe very difficult back then in terms of understanding lifestyle behaviors and to track continuously, we can now do with the level of ubiquity of technology. So moving into the next segment, which was also my research segment, is that from a scientific research perspective, it is viable to collect data passively, of course, and through digital health data capture. It prefers richness and granularity of an individual's behavior, the confluence of factors that impact behavior in the moment. And the very exciting thing is that we not only just look at populations or certain demographics of people, and we can make differences or understand different profiles, but actually understand changes within an individual as well, and understand these over time. Now, these data may contribute to discovery science by revealing certain markers of health or risk behaviors, as well as translational science by informing us what personalized and timely models of intervention could work. The next and final point in setting the scene is that a good chunk of smartphone users, about 60%, are already attuned to using technology for their health and wellness. So consumers are more likely to use it to monitor and manage. And they're also increasingly more educated on behavioral health. So well-being has become something more measurable, really opening the door to an entirely new scenario of well-being as a service or wellness as a service, and really seeing wellness and healthcare industries merging in this intersection. And digital experiences is really transforming wellness in a way that it's not just for early adopters, but for people like my mom or your kids, from fitness buffs to those that are not fitness buffs, and everyone in between. And not only this, but they are also demanding more from their digital experiences as well. So making sure that whatever we put forward, it's not enough to take something that was historically offline and slapping that onto an online platform, but making sure we design the experience in a way that's very human-centric, digital first, and delightful. So taking all of this, the Salutogenic Model, the data capture and analyses from smartphones and wearables, the consumer readiness, and the demand from more of their digital experiences. This really sets the stage for what we've been doing at Neurum, which is build Clara to feasibly and comfortably integrate into people's lives. So an introduction to Clara. Clara is your behavioral wellness companion that lives in your pocket and personalizes your wellness journey for you. And it's different because it understands, grows, and adapts with you with a little bit of help from machine learning. So take the story that I shared earlier with Caleb. Imagine if Clara was able to, from the everyday behaviors, understand Caleb's metrics and maybe the risks that he was going through, and help him raise self-awareness through data. I think one of the best user testimonials I've ever heard was someone saying that Clara was like a mirror held up to them. So that's step one. Then what we can do next is do the personalized intervention component. So in a more intentional and meaningful manner that makes sense for him, pairs him with content and mini intervention exercises that is tailored for his level of risk and his story. So essentially, Caleb's Clara and my Clara will look fundamentally different because our data profiles are very different. Now, let's say if his profile changes, because humans are dynamic. He could be, for example, sleeping perhaps quite well a week ago, but this week maybe not so much, or something may have changed. To be able to have that program or mini intervention, if you will, have that content adapt with him to meet where he is in his wellness journey. Now, this is the part where, say, if it came to a point where human support is needed, or if Caleb is ready, to have that proactively prompted in a way in which it has direct reach at the press of a button, in a way where he doesn't have to go out of his way, go to another platform, go search for a number somewhere in an employee handbook, and for that human support to be presented in a way that is comfortable for him. So all in one place, one seamless user journey, and Clara meets you where you are. And that's exactly what Clara is, to ensure we grow clarity of mind. Now, this is just an example of connecting the measurement component and management hand in hand. We're really able to connect people better with their behavioral health and wellness. Our approach is to make sure that this is done credibly, precisely, and privately. These are extremely important. So firstly, with the data protection and privacy component, we of course have to conform to the latest data compliance regulations, industry standard encryption, and data transfer protocols to ensure that data is safe. And with equal weighting of importance to this is also the transparency and communication of how data is being collected, stored, transferred, and used. Secondly is scientific backing. Every piece of content, every intervention that we put in front of people, we don't just take something off with no due diligence. We make sure that it's evidence-based, but we also take that a step further, and we don't just rely on other people's research. Yes, we stand on the shoulder of giants, but we also publish our own alongside with our academic research partners. We are very fortunate that we have wonderful partnerships with world-renowned research institutions in this space. And finally, the last point is on empathetic design. The star of the story is never the technology, it's you. It's the humans in which you serve. If you are a provider or an insurer, for example. And we build tech that helps them connect better with themselves and those around them. And we have to do that in a way where it's inclusive and culturally sensitive as well. Now, how we know we've hit the mark at Neurum is when we achieve relevance and usefulness for people, i.e. it's appropriate and it's valuable effectively to someone. And thus far, that metric is 87.8%. So 87.8% of the time someone's on Clara, they find something relevant and useful for them. And this is really important because that means with each interaction, it is a meaningful one. And when we do so, this boosts positive health outcomes. So we did a validation study where we demonstrated 60.8% improvements in emotional distress scores through a randomized control trial formatting that we did with the University of Hong Kong's Department of Psychiatry, looking at a Clara intervention group versus a wait list. We also found that it boosts engagement rates as well, and our models are able to prompt more proactive and timely manners, for example, a push notification and targeted interventions. And we were able to find that the engagement going from a 0.5% engagement rate for static interventions at 30 days versus a 68% increase when we introduced personalization. And this is great because it demonstrates re-engagement. That means people were coming back and actually doing and completing the micro interventions. Therefore, the metric of relevance and the secondary submeasures are important, i.e. the engagement levels and positive health outcomes, because they come along for the ride as well. And we have a manuscript currently in progress with some of our research partners at Lingnan University and the University of Cambridge, really highlighting the importance of personalized and relevant experiences and support. Now, to really wrap things up, in ensuring we meet people where they are in supporting their minds and lifestyles is to put measurement and management hand in hand, leverage the current appetite and climate for digital health, both in industry and research. And the last thing is relevancy is key. Now, our ethos at Neurum is making sure behavioral healthcare is not one size fits all, but one size fits one for everyone. And there are several arenas in which we're moving towards, and that is to, of course, continue growing and enhancing our Clara offering for enterprise customer bases, to grow and continue our partnerships that share the same mission and vision, and to grow our reach in the community, and to continue co-creating from the ground up with our users. And if these resonate with you, I welcome any questions or thoughts, or to reach out directly to me with the information presented. Thank you so much.